Now if you weren't able to find a place to store this earlier, not to worry, you can just throw it back in there. What we're going to do now is we are going to take a peek inside that keg. I actually swished around with my hand and pulled out some of the foam and loosened it up. And I therefore think it might be ready to put back together. That looks pretty good to me. There's actually just a very few remnants of foam in there. Total amount would be like well under a teaspoon, would be like a quarter teaspoon or less. Very good. So we're going to put this bad boy back together now. All my parts have been soaking long enough. These guys here are doing okay. My other thing over here, I'll just turn that over now. And I'm going to get my wrench and I'm going to put it all back together. Oh, one thing I have neglected to soak, and I will do that while I'm putting the other part back together. Make sure I soak my lid. I always do it, if you do it this way up, you could get air caught under here and that part doesn't get soaked. So do it that part down. I'll just throw it in there. And we are going to flip this fellow back over. And we are just going to put it back together now. I got my wrench. I flick it in the other direction. And lucky me, I labeled this one liquid. So this one is my gas. Put my dip tube in. Oh, it's being finicky, of course. My gas tube. There we go. And now one thing I forgot to do is normally I keep even for the same keg, I normally keep my poppets separate just in case, but those ones do appear to be the same. So I will get my gas post, which is my 2-pin. I will get my poppet and put it in there. Sometimes what happens is when you're screwing this back on, you'll see here the center of the poppet is centered in the hole right now, and so it's not an issue. Sometimes that won't center, and then if you start tightening it down when it's not centered, what you're doing is, remember those little feet I showed you earlier, the little feet on the poppet, you'll bend those. So if that's not centering for you, well, a really cool trick is tip it upside down, give it a shake. You can look to see if it's centered, and then do the initial tightening with your hand while it's upside down, and that will keep it centered because gravity works in your favor, not against you. But in this case, it's not an issue. It only happens sometimes. And give it a good tight. That's good. Now I'm going to take this guy. I'll just fling out as much of the liquid as I can. I know from my marking earlier that's the liquid post. And I just drop that in there. And I look down bottom. This guy goes right to the center of the bottom. And sometimes with these ones that go in the center, as you're tightening it, that thing will turn and come off center and it'll kind of get stuck. You want to try to prevent that from happening if you can. So I put my poppet in there, and hopefully this guy will center for me nicely, and it does. Centers just perfectly. I'll give it my hand tight as well as I can, and then add it with the wrench and retrieve my lid and my giant O-ring. Oh my gosh, that water is cold. And just give it a shake off. And I'm not too worried about the little bit of star sand that's dripping here. I'll just shake it as much as I can. But star sand is food grade, it's edible, you won't detect any flavor in your beer whatsoever, it's flavorless. And I'm done. If I wanted to, I could pressurize that. I would store it pressurized and it would be sanitary you know, at least for a few days. And now I'm ready to put some beer in there, so I'm going to go retrieve my beer and get set up on the counter over here, and we'll do the rest.